or to invest in those institutions, but the goal was to address, we realized as a city that in the Twin Cities metro area back in 2017, it's hard to remember, but back in 2017, remember we realized there were more job vacancies than job seekers in our city? So we realized our challenge was to address the barriers that are disconnecting people from our economy. That's why we built our city based on making sure that our schools could provide an education, a high quality education for all of our children.
Hello, this is Marty Owings, and we're at the Capitol, and today we're going to speak with mayoral candidate Melvin Carter, who is running for St. Paul mayor. Because if you're elected, you'd be the first black mayor, right, of the city.
That's true.
And how does that impact the way you run, or any of your thoughts about what might happen?
It impacts a lot. There's a lot of just door knocking this morning. There was some women I had a conversation with on a porch who brought that up and who were talking about how important it is to them that their children and that their grandchildren see me in that office and know that City Hall and the policies that we make and the way that we make resource decisions is going to be reflective of community.
Twin Cities has two new mayors, each one in their 30s. On one side of the river, the voting dragged on into a second day, but on the east side, the results came swiftly. Melvin Carter was elected mayor of St. Paul Tuesday, beating his closest challenger by a hefty 25 points. Melvin Carter, 38 years old, former Capital City Council member, and until recently, he worked in Governor Dayton's administration heading up early childhood initiatives. Well, Mayor-elect, welcome. Did you think it was going to be this wide a margin for you?
Thanks so much. I appreciate the invitation. No, we expected a close race. Election day, we pulled our children around the kitchen table and just to let them know, make sure everybody knew it's ranked voting and this is how it works. And we're not going to know for a few days. And so we were very surprised by the margin.
You, we and I were talking on NPR earlier this week. You're a son of the old Rondo neighborhood, which was destroyed by government action, and now you're in power in City Hall. What does it feel like?
It feels great, and it feels like an opportunity to do a lot of good things. We started this conversation almost 2 years ago. We've just had conversations in living rooms and coffee shops all over this city, and part of what we've really heard is that when we pass policies and make resource decisions at City Hall or at the Capitol and do it without hearing from communities, then decisions like Rondo happen. And so having the perspective that I bring from having grown up in our community, from being a Rondo, descendant of old Rondo, from having grown up in our public schools and libraries, I think gives us an opportunity to to do government in a way that impacts people's lives in a way that we just haven't before.
There was a controversial flyer that was mailed out. Police Federation had a piece of it, and it kind of said that because of the burglary at your house, gunshots went up in St. Paul, and there was some controversy after that. Did that play any role in your margin, do you think, or hard to tell?
We've spent a long time really focused our grassroots electoral kind of connection with folks. We built a big team of organizers early on, and we felt like we were kind of in a good position even before that happened. The great thing I think that happened, and as a result of that, there were a few individuals who were involved in that, but I'm actually really heartened by the hundreds, if not even thousands of St. Paulites who came together and said, we're going to call that for what it is, and we're going to build a positive, forward-looking politic in St. Paul. And so I'm excited to serve as their mayor in that way.
What's your relationship with the current chief, Todd Axtell? And I ask that because you're inheriting a police chief. He's known you evidently since you were small, and your father is a St. Paul cop. How's your relationship with him?
I've got a great relationship with the police chief. I think we've been on the phone every single day since Election Day, and I think he's absolutely the right chief to do the reform work that I'm excited to do, and I'm looking forward to doing it with him.
And what does police accountability look to you in your conversations with the chief? Have you talked yet?
One of the conversations about my burglary is the fact that I had a neighbor who saw something wrong and called me right away instead of calling 911. Where I think we need to go is the place where we know that every person in St. Paul can feel comfortable calling the police and knows that when they see the St. Paul Police Department there's a real trust and mutual respect involved, and that they're here to protect and serve. I think that helps our officers, and I think that helps our neighbors, and so I'm looking forward to working with the chief to do that.
Ranked choice voting, you won, so you like ranked choice voting, but do you think its time has come in St. Paul and it's something for the long haul?
I like ranked choice voting. We didn't get a chance to check out the second choices in St. Paul this week, and I was excited to see that. I do think that ranked voting actually impacts how you have the conversation. I think that's been a part of why we've had a forward-thinking conversation. Under conventional voting, when someone says they're supporting my opponent, then that's the end of the conversation. With ranked voting, that's only the beginning of the conversation, and that's why we invested so heavily in grassroots organizing and built this kind of army of almost 600 volunteers who talk to 100,000 plus voters.
What kind of theme are you going to strike in your State of the City or your inaugural address? Have you given any thought to the points you're going to want to make as you begin your term?
I haven't started penning an inaugural address at all yet. We've started the transition work, and I'm looking forward to announcing a transition team next week. The theme will be consistent with the theme that we've had all year, and that is that we've got to build a city that works for all of us. But that starts with our schools and our local economy and our city services, knowing that we're able to connect and serve every part of the city with a high quality across the city. That's going to be a theme that we continue to focus on. The fact that our diversity isn't a problem to solve in St. Paul, but it's one of our biggest opportunities to look into. And that if we're talking about building St. Paul for the future, it can't be about Band-Aid fixes and chasing symptoms around. We have to cut to the core.
You were talking about grassroots, and I'm wondering, I was recalling the news conference, it was after the Philando Castile shooting, and it was at the governor's mansion, and I believe you were there.
Yeah.
And there were activists there at that news conference that wanted action done right now to talk about racial disparities and police brutality. And now, so you've got activists who want something done, and now you're in the establishment. So how are you going to walk that line?
That's a great question. I think it's about making sure that people know that their voices are being heard and taken very seriously. When we talk about rejecting this kind of decades-old, philosophy that when we talk about public safety, it's about hiring more police and tougher prosecutors and building bigger jails.
How do we get people motivated? We said, well, look at our own stigmas and then get involved in trying to make changes.
Okay.
But how do we get more people interested in this? How does it affect us? And I would want to say something about the societal costs of our legal system.
Well, that's very good. One of the things I've discovered is this, is that people don't want to get involved. If it isn't about them, then they don't care. How do we make them care?
Well, I would say we have to show them that it is actually about them. And, we might not, the prison that's closest might be its own separate thing. We might rarely see it on the highway or some kind of sign or something, but it's out of place, out of sight, out of mind.
Okay.
But I would say that we show people what the societal impacts are.
Over-criminalizing and marginalizing, in particular, people of color from our community. That's destabilizing our communities, and it's why we haven't been able to invest in our community resources like our rec centers and our libraries and our schools.
Are you going to have to tell folks, give me time? Are you expecting any amount of pressure from activists who want you to act quickly?
We've put out our Community First policing plan earlier this fall, and people received it really well. I was joined by Clarence Castile, Philando Castile's uncle, and our former police chief, William Finney, when we laid that out. And that's because we worked really heavily with them to build a plan that both of them supported and are excited for. So we do have some immediate steps that we're planning on taking. That starts with reforming our use of force policies so that we all know that we're on one accord around when officers are and are not authorized to use force. That it means really investing in our mental health response team.
We show what it's doing to African American people and how that affects us. We have families that are destroyed by the system. It's a vicious cycle. And we can all at some point or the other be affected by crime. Sure. And the key is, could that have crime been prevented? That might have been impossible. And you might have been able to avoid an assault, or you might have been able to avoid this or that. We might live in areas where we don't see where people are struggling more,
sure.
But they are, and it does affect us. It affects where money goes. It affects what resources we devote where. That might go. The prison system is sucking up resources, and it's only feeding this vicious cycle that's on its own not reducing crime. In fact, we're having a families, whole units of people that are
exacerbating
sucked up into
Yeah.
it and just continuing it.
Mayor Coleman funded the beginning of these mental health teams within the police department that can help to connect people in crisis to help in a more meaningful way. And that means continuing the work of elevating our civilian review panel because we know that trust that's been broken in the light can't be rebuilt in the dark.
I'm Melvin Carter, and I'm excited to have served in St. Paul. I'm excited about where we are as a city right now, and I'm equally excited about where we're going next as a city. 4 years ago, we had a conversation about getting out of the mode of chasing symptoms around and said, we as a city are gonna start addressing core issues. A lot of people across St. Paul, I think, who are frustrated as ever with what's going on in Washington, D.C., and who are committed more than ever before to making sure that how we take care of each other on the most local and intimate of levels is one that at every single step along the way articulates respect, love, and appreciation for each other, and that Minnesotan, that most Minnesotan of values, that notion that we all do better when we all do better. We're going to get out of this kind of perennial cycle of whether we're going to cut services on the thousands of people who need them or raise taxes. We got out of that by growing our city and by approaching things like the Ford plant with a big vision for the future of our city so that we know we're building St. Paul for the future. When we start talking about jobs, we realize the goal wasn't to give $100 million to banks or to invest in those institutions.
But yet and still, if you get to that office, you're not just the mayor for the black community. You have to be the mayor for the whole community, right? I mean, have they brought that up to you? Have people said anything to you about that? Like, you know, despite the fact that you're going to be the first black mayor if you win, you know, how are you going to govern for everyone?
We show what it's doing to African American people and how that affects us. You know, we have families that are destroyed by the system. You know, it's a vicious cycle. And we can all at some point or the other be affected by crime. Sure. And the key is, could that have crime been prevented? That might have been impossible. And you know, you might have been able to avoid an assault, or you might have been able to avoid this or that. You know, we might live in areas where we don't see where people are struggling more,
Sure.
But they are, and it does affect us. It affects where money goes. It affects, you know, what resources we devote where. You know, that might go. The prison system is sucking up resources, and it's only feeding this vicious cycle that's on its own not reducing crime. In fact, we're having families, whole units of people that are sucked up into it and just continuing it.
Hello, it's me, older twin of Minneapolis, a place you got to see. We have changed most everything. We are the center of it all. Welcome to glorious St. Paul. Hello, can you hear me? I'm in CJ's field, happy lower town's the place to be. We have crashed ice every year. Head to Tommy's or the Spot Bar, you can grab a summit beer. Sure, there's a difference between us, but only 7 miles. Hello from the other side. We'd love to have you swing on by. The green line will take you into downtown with ease. If you want breakfast, we recommend Mickey's. Hello from the east side. Let's go and grab a juicy Lucy or some walleye and a beer. Do you like theater? Have you ever been out of Uptown or left Dinky Town before? It's no secret that almost all of you can travel 7 miles. So hello from the other side. You snuck into our skating guide. Sorry, not sorry. Then MLS chose St. Paul with the Vikes twins and T-Wolves. There's no reason to brawl. Hello from the east side. We want you to say that you've tried. Cosetas in Heartland, Pasaluna, the Nook, Mancini's and Dixie's. Yeah, we know we can cook and sing. In St. Paul. In St. Paul. In St. Paul. Hello from the other side. Our collection of craft beer is wide. We've got flatters, summit, bad weather, and bank. And if you are thirsty, you can bring your whole gang. Hello from the east side. It's time to cross the Great Divide. And if you like fancy, the Intercon is brand new. So come on over to something special for you in St.
That's what got us into this mess in the first place. That's what overcriminalized and marginalized people from whole communities out of our society. That was what was destabilizing our community. And so we took a different route. We said safe communities are built on stable communities, where families could afford to pay the rent, put food on the table, where children could feel hopeful about their future. We realized that safety is about police officers who are from our community, who know our community, who reflect our diversity, and who have a stake in our neighborhood.
So you began your mayoral candidacy like very early. Almost, it'll be 2 years once the election happens, won't it?
Yeah, almost 2 years. We started as soon as I knew I was really seriously interested in doing this. We figured no need to play coy with the conversations. Let's have some real conversations with folks. And it gave us the opportunity to spend a full year just talking to voters around what they imagined for St. Paul, and those conversations and the interactions that we had in every ward and every neighborhood across the city, up in the Rondo neighborhood, to say that, families of color, to families who feel like they're not, in the historic kind of favorite neighborhoods of our city, that we all have representation, and we truly are building a city that works for all of us.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about people tagging you the front runner?
Well, I don't know. A whole lot comes with that term front runner. What I know is that I'm really excited about the way volunteers have stepped forward to help us. I'm really excited about that every Saturday morning, or when I walk into our campaign headquarters on a weekday evening, it's full of folks, getting ready to go out and door knock, and really excited to, call voters on the phone. And I'm really excited and appreciative of the response that we're getting all over the city. And so, we have a lot of work to do between now and Election Day. And if we do that work, I think we'll be in a good position come November.
So take it, and you've campaigned for others before, and you've campaigned for, obviously, for city council before. What's different?
Yes, I have campaigned for others and for my own campaigns for city council, and that's important because this is a team sport. You know, we know that one person sitting in one office does not transformational change make, and so those relationships that I built with our city council and with our school board member and with our legislative delegation and all the way up to our governor, I think will benefit St. Paul. What's different about right now? I think in a lot of ways everything. And in a lot of ways, nothing. I mean, our job is to talk to voters directly and to connect with voters, and that's the same work that Paul Wellstone did, and that's the same work that Hubert Humphrey did, and that's, you know, that's the way to win, is to connect with voters right now.
Without that trust in the center. That's why we worked hard to revise the use of force policies, so that we can all be on one accord about when our officers are and are not authorized to use force. That's why we established those mental health response teams, so that when our officers met people in crisis, we could connect them to help and know we didn't have to use force. And that's exactly why we elevated the visibility of our civilian review team, because we knew the trust that's been broken in the light rebuilt in the dark. We can build on all of those things. I'm excited to continue to do it as mayor for another 4 years. Thank you so much for being here.
Mary Berry said once he was more popular than Ronald Reagan. He said, "Look at me, I'm in my third term. Where is he? Gone after 2.
Well, last weekend, voters in St. Paul and Minneapolis voted for 2 young new mayors, Melvin Carter in St. Paul and Jacob Fry in Minneapolis.
Election day proved to be a historic day in both St. Paul and Minneapolis.
In the last 3 hours, the city of Minneapolis announced that Jacob Fry won the mayor's office after the 5th round of ranked choice voting.
Fry's win came over an incumbent mayor, Betsy Hodges, and 15 other candidates. It was the highest voter turnout in a Minneapolis mayor's race since 1981.
In St. Paul, Melvin Carter III became the first African-American to be elected mayor of the...
Voters clearly signaling they want change, electing not only Mayor-elect Fry, but 5 new city council members. And Mayor-elect Jacob Fry joins us now. Thank you so much for coming, and congratulations.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Well, absolutely. In a ranked choice election, there was no outside polling. I mean, were you pretty confident you had this? And what do you think put you over the top?
Well, we were feeling a whole lot of momentum going into Election Day, so while you don't definitively know the outcome, we did know that the message was resonating in a big way, that we were looking for a fresh start and that we were looking for some unity in the process.
Hi, Amelia. Yes, I'm here at Mayor-elect Jacob Fry's campaign headquarters in Northeast Minneapolis, where he told me he's obviously thrilled with the results that came down today. It was a late night for him and his supporters, as they knew early on that he had an early lead in the polls, about 25% for those first ranked choice votes. But of course, you had to get above 50%, and that's what makes this system so interesting, is that last night his closest competitor was Tom Hoke. Well, today, when the votes came down, Raymond Dean was his second closest competitor. But of course, it didn't matter in the end. He will be the next mayor of Minneapolis, and he said that he could not wait to get started to work.
I feel amazing. You know, I have the opportunity now to represent the greatest city in the whole world as mayor.
Office after spending 4 years representing the 3rd Ward on Minneapolis City Council. He was actually born in Virginia, but fell in love with Minneapolis when he was in town for a race. Fry was once a professional runner and then an attorney working in the city before he began his political career. At 36 years old, he's the 2nd youngest mayor the city has ever had. I sat down with the future mayor of Minneapolis, who told me he's ready to work for his supporters and the people who didn't vote for him.
I say I'm the mayor for every single resident in this Minneapolis, regardless of whether I was their first choice vote or they hate my guts. And I'm sure there's a few that feel both of those two things. And so I think, you know, a big part of item number 1 is reaching out to those that might not agree with me on every single issue, hearing them out and seeing where their input can be incorporated into policy.
All right. One of the things that's going to happen this week is the announcement or celebration of the completion or substantially complete Nicollet Mall construction. Downtown also has a pretty significant crime problem.
Said his first priority as mayor is to try to start to bring unity to the city.
For just one month through the downtown neighborhood, are we ready for the Super Bowl here?
Yes, we will be ready for the Super Bowl, and that's not to say that we don't have a crime problem.
President and of the NAACP in Minneapolis and St. Thomas University Law School professor made it official in front of the 4th Police Precinct in Minneapolis. It was the site of a 3-week encampment last year to protest Jamar Clark's death.
Lord, and help to mend our community.
Nakima Levy-Pounds prayed with supporters in the shadow of the 4th Precinct headquarters, then said she's running for Minneapolis mayor, a campaign for racial justice.
Well, I'm here today to declare that it is time for a change.
Amid calls of bye-bye Betsy, Levy-Pounds accused Mayor Betsy Hodges of failing people of color.
Right now, we have seen about a 200% uptick in violent crime and specifically shootings. But over the next several months, we're going to be working obviously with the Minneapolis Police Department, with our new chief, Rondo, as well as other jurisdictions to ensure that we do have complete safety in the area of the Super Bowl, because, you know, we deserve to show off and highlight that which sets us apart in Minneapolis, and we can't do that if people don't feel safe.
All right. Promising as mayor to clean up the department.
And you need someone with courage who's not afraid of the police union, not afraid of the rank and file officers who don't want to change. The only one that I fear is the living God.
Because, I mean, when you look at, these are the crime statistics broken down by neighborhood for July, and really what you come away with thinking is that most of these neighborhoods in Minneapolis are very safe. Then you get to the downtown precinct, 262 incidents, 30 armed robberies, 4 rapes, 18 aggravated assaults. And this is within feet of a precinct.
Yep. Yeah, it's been bad. You know, and the mayor has full and exclusive authority over the police department, so this is something that we want to get to work on right away.
Well, Mayor Hodges is running for re-election. Her campaign told us tonight she had no comment. We also contacted the Minneapolis Police Union President Bob Kroll. He told us he thinks the city deserves a lot better choices for candidates for mayor.
And I want to make sure that community policing is more than just a catchphrase. I mean, I want you to know that your officer on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. is Jenny. I want you to know Jenny. I want you to know her by name. And we can get there.
All right. One of the endorsements that you got, and you got a number, including the Star Tribune, the Minnesota Daily newspaper. You also were endorsed by Don Damon, who is the fiancé of Justine Damon, who was killed by a Minneapolis police officer. It got worldwide attention. How did that happen, and what do you think that meant to your campaign?
Well, Don reached out to us, and he had also sat down with several other mayoral candidates as well and wanted to hear the overarching vision. And one thing that Don and I do agree on is we need to make sure that police officers have a wellness plan, that they go into situations and incident with being their best version of self, that they're taken care of, that they're calm and collected, and yeah, a big part of that is wellness. And so that's something that we definitely want to get to work on. In this push to kind of villainize small local business and large business, but the truth is that we need it for employment purposes, and I do think that we can take a nuanced approach with any of these new regulations.
Right.
This is going to be a provocative campaign, perhaps an exciting one too.
I remember a few years ago, I think we had, what, 17 or 20 candidates?
Well, more than that, it might be 35.
Wow.
Maybe we'll have fewer this time around.
We'll see.